I quit. This thought was always there in the back of my mind throughout my Webb career, especially when things seemed trying or difficult. It's no secret that Webb is hard and that we have all worked tirelessly to get where we are now, here on the eve of graduation, ready to start the next part of our lives. But one of the reasons that I didn't quit was because of the teachers we had here, teachers that inspired us, teachers that taught us, and teachers that helped shape who we are now, teachers like Ms. Fisher. So during this last year, when online learning became frustrating and unnecessarily difficult for all of us, we struggled to find motivation while being so isolated from everything and everyone. Instead of making her classes seem like another task we had to complete just to get through our days, Ms. Fisher made them fun and enjoyable. She taught us that while learning is important, it is a process of trial and error, and it's okay to mess up because you're learning, you're improving. It is not a process of instant perfection. Like this scarf that I kind of knit, I don't have it with me here today, and trust me, it looks awful, but flashback to sophomore year, to one of the evening activities on a Friday night. My friends and I were up at Ms. Fisher's house, and she was teaching us how to knit. And no matter how hard I tried, all I ended up with was this ugly bunch of knotted and tangled yarn. But she never gave up on my terrible knitting skills and just tried to help me get better. That day, I told myself I'd figure out how to knit by graduation. Well, here we are now, the night before, and I'm happy to tell you that I finally got it. Like with my Webb career, I could have just given up when I faced adversity, but teachers like Ms. Fisher made me want to get better and work my way through my problems. Ms. Fisher not only inspired us to keep going, but she also unrelentlessly tried to teach us, making sure that whatever material or lesson she had in mind got through, and she was also never afraid to keep it real. So we can see this when a student finally understands something or comes to a really smart conclusion and she proclaims, "They can be taught." So thank you, Ms. Fisher, for everything you have taught us and not giving up on us. And it has been a blast to be in your classes and in debate in just these past 4 years. And with that, it is my pleasure to introduce our VWS Class of 2021 Candlelight speaker, Ms. Fisher.
Whew. Thank you, Rhea. That's a sound, okay. Thank you, Mrs. Lance. Thank you, Ms. Cardiaget, Dr. Smith, Mr. Stockdale. And the class of 2021, I'm so honored and surprised and touched and adjectives for being asked to be here. And I'm very proud of you all. And 2022, I can't wait to see what next year holds for you. And we'll all be here for that experience. Okay. When I was young, my parents occasionally brought me and my sister to the Ringling Brothers Circus, which would unload in the empty parking lots near the Boston waterfront. And after the mistreated elephants and the bizarre clown performances would come my favorite of all circus acts, the trapeze. Today, I don't want to talk about how much I loved the beauty and the coordination of watching them sway back and forth, release from their partner's legs at exactly the right moment, flip a couple times, and then catch another partner's arms. No, I want to talk about what lay below them, the net. Thank goodness for the net. Immense and pliant, the circus technicians reliably raised the net high enough so that when the flippity-doo act ended, the trapeze artist could intentionally fall 30 feet down, plunging into its springy depths. They would then bounce back up a few times, perhaps turning another flip for good measure, before gracefully exiting the ring. In fact, the descent into the net seemed almost part of the act itself. We frequently use the term safety net as a metaphor. You better have a safety net for a rainy day. Well, thank goodness he had a safety net when his life began to fall apart. But this usage implies that a net is only for emergencies. It's only for when things go terribly wrong. and you accidentally or unexpectedly plunge toward the earth, toward paralysis or death. Our standard usage also suggests that you yourself are not in your own safety net, because then how could you fall into yourself? How could you catch yourself? And finally, we imply that on normal days, you would not use this special object. You might, in fact, never need to use a safety net. By extension, then, needing to rely on your metaphorical safety net means that you, by yourself, you weren't enough. That the world became too much for you. It was too much to handle. You were weak. And now I pause in my narrative to reveal 3 random but related facts about Miss Fisher, or as you may now address me, graduates, Jess. Number 1, if I laugh hard enough, I will cry tears of true sadness. It's like there's a rabbit tunnel underneath me that connects my feelings of extreme joy with profound heartache. Number 2, feeling weak gives me anxiety. And number 3, historically, I have not been a hugger because I find hugs to be very intimate. I learned in my early life that strength is synonymous with independence and that relying on others is weakness. I didn't like playing competitive sports because I didn't like losing. I didn't like playing games I didn't already know or hanging out with people I wasn't close with because I didn't want to be left behind or left out. I didn't want to ask people to wait up for me or include me. I didn't like asking for help because I felt weak and out of control. Now, I've done some work, capital W work, on this mindset over the years as one does work on a house. But in these last 15 months of COVID, I had to tear down the entire structure. Let's say it used to be like a 2-story Mission Revival and rebuild, and this time it's like a California Craftsman. We all had some very intense moments this year. We had life and death moments. We had moments with family and friends where we comforted each other, often through panes of glass. We cooked each other meals. We did each other shopping. But I want to talk today not about those moments, but just about a few small ones and what they mean for us as we walk out of this storm. One afternoon this year, our brains addled with pandemic boredom, a few faculty gathered in my driveway because we decided that it was both urgent and important for us to learn how to jump rope double Dutch style. We purchased the extra long ropes and everything. Susie Lindsley, Wendy Maxon, and Margaret Lofgren, all clearly schoolyard experts, took the lead in our instruction, and we were terrible at it, even Michael Zaney. But I think that's because he's too tall and the rope kept hitting his head. Next moment. When Althea, my daughter, turned 4, the first of 2 birthdays that she has celebrated in the pandemic, Sarah Lance lent my family her golf cart, and we taped streamers all over it for a birthday safari. I put on my fanciest dress. My husband put on the suit that we got married in, and we drove around campus with our bedazzled children, searching for stuffed animals that faculty and their family had hidden in trees for Althea to spot, all the while checking off our discoveries on a safari list and blaring Kids Bop from a portable Bluetooth. Next moment. When the Claremont Club closed in the depths of July heat, and that was on the same day that the Claremont school system announced they would not be reopening in person, I went into my closet, and I sat on a yoga bolster, and I cried big, ugly, nasty tears. And later on, in Melanie Bauman's backyard for a tea party and kiddie pool time, she informed me that crying is therapeutic, but crying alone is not nearly as healing as crying in front of someone. Starting in April of 2020, my grandmother, 87 and trapped in her independent living facility, would Zoom with us every day at lunch to read stories to my children. Louise Fisher was 7 when Pearl Harbor happened and the U.S. joined World War II, the same age as my daughter, Louise Nichols, when the pandemic began. My grandmother knows how much her life was shaped by years growing up in wartime America, and none of us knows yet how much Louise and other kids will be shaped by this pandemic. Anyway, schools and daycares were closed, and we didn't know if play dates were safe yet, and Scott and I were still trying to do our jobs and put on a brave face so our kids wouldn't be scared, and we were so scared. But they painted with watercolors, and they played with Play-Doh for an hour while my grandmother read them Charlotte's Web and The Enormous Crocodile over and over again, and we kept moving through it one day at a time. One last one. There was one day before any of us were vaccinated when Susie Lindsley and I promised each other we would take each other's kids if one of us got COVID. On a purely practical level, we knew that if the adults in our households tested positive and got sick, that we had to be hospitalized, that we died, that our children would likely test positive and be contagious as well. So agreeing to take each other's children meant allowing the virus to come into our own homes. But I have no relatives living within 3,000 miles of here, and her parents are getting older, so we agreed we would take each other's children. The safety net, it's not below us. It's not something we drop down into to be used only in dire emergencies, in which some of us, the strongest perhaps, will never need to use. No, we are all mortal and we are all infinitely caring. We are all each other's net and we are all our own. Indeed, each of us is a crux, a node, a hub, connected by spokes upon spokes to all the other hubs in the net. Sometimes we roll north into the embrace of one friend, and sometimes we roll south into the embrace of another, and sometimes northeast to a parent, and sometimes southwest to a sibling, and sometimes they roll over to us. What a gift we possess between ourselves. Pause for me and think about a moment this year when you rolled into the net of someone near you. And think of a moment when someone rolled into you. And now we walk forward on our path. We don't know where it leads, where it will be dark, where we will stumble, where we will skip. But whether you are stumbling or skipping, use your net. We've got to keep it limber and activated, even in small moments. Buy someone that Starbucks or that yogurt they like a lot because you just happen to be at the store. Play guitar and sing bad harmonies in someone's carport. Binge watch a silly show together. Babysit someone's kids. Bring someone a thing you baked. Have a group text filled primarily by gifts. But that's the easy part. I think we are all so quick to extend ourselves to others in need. Our problem, and I am as guilty as any of us here, is our failure to tell others that we need help, we need love, we need support, we are lonely. And now we return to the thesis of my TED Talk, that the safety net works best when we all activate it. We are all recognizing that we are in it, not above it, perhaps never needing it if we're so strong enough. No, it works because each of us is an interconnected node pulling and pushing at each other. We can't pretend to be outside it or above it. Doing so weakens the net for everyone. You have to call that friend and cry on someone's porch when you've had an off day. Do it without shame. It's just your turn. Paradoxically, the more we ask for the help and love and support we need, the stronger the safety net gets, and the more the net will be there for our friends and families and even for strangers and not just for us. I'm trying to say something here about the power of communal action, of connectivity, about the strength that comes from vulnerability, not despite it or after we get over it. Our vulnerability, our willingness to cry, not in our closets, but in front of others, not only strengthens ourselves, but our whole community. It makes it easier for us to ask for help and for us to provide it, which then makes it easier for us and others to ask for it the next time, to trust each other, to feel a part of something. Our collective honesty and vulnerability binds us together. And so I have become a hugger. To close, a few bits of practical advice as I've reached the denouement of my speech. When someone in your net asks you whether you are fine and you are not fine, say, "I am not fine." Don't be jealous when one of your friends leans on someone else that day rather than on you. It doesn't mean they don't need and love you as well. It just means they tugged on that spoke rather than yours on that particular day. Extend your net beyond just your friends. Walk someone home who looks like they're leaving a party alone. Don't let someone leave their drink unattended. Tell the jerk in Target to back off, even if the person he's being a jerk to is a stranger. Amplify the voices of people around you who are not being heard or respected. Find romantic partners who are your allies, who fit into your net, which means they may lean on you at times, and sometimes it's the other way around, when you need to lean on them. They hold you up when you need them to. They look out for you, and they understand when you go to a friend or to a sibling instead of them. They don't ask for your emotional exclusivity. Sometimes another person in your net will fail you. Someone you loved will break your heart. A close friend will be cruel to you. And when that happens, tell them. Tell them directly, and then let others know, not out of gossip, but so that they can be there for you. They can support you. When we get burned, our natural impulse, of course, is to pull inward, to be afraid to trust again. But there's no intimacy without vulnerability. The net will regenerate. Even when one node fails you, sometimes the person can mend it, and no matter what, others are there to catch you. Tell your people that you love them and that you are there for them, even when it's cheesy and awkward. Allow your net to evolve. New people may come in, others may leave. We will all need to do some work in the coming months and even years to rebuild the intimacy that likely faded in a year of so much isolation. Start small and trust that, like Charlotte's Web, your net will strengthen and be beautiful. When you leave this place and you go forward on your path, know that there's a net of people right here. Your teachers, your advisors, your coaches, your friends, who you may not see or talk to every day, but you are supported and you are held on off days and on days, even when the net feels invisible. Thank you so much for having me here tonight. Congratulations.